Welcome to the SPS Digital Learning Hour, brought to you by the Digital Learning and Assessment Department. We're coming to you today from a conference room in Central Office, bringing you the latest news in Springfield Public Schools in regards to technology, along with inspiring interviews from teachers who are using technology in the classroom. We'll also inform you the latest updates, practices, and news as it pertains to our district. Whether you are new to using technology in the classroom or a seasoned vet, we are here to help. Thanks for joining us today. I'm your host, Mike Thomas, the Bearded Tech Ed guy. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Bearded Tech Ed. In case you missed it, the latest blog post went out, and we're taking a look at what project, problem, and challenge-based learning is. We're going to deep dive into each of them, give some examples, talk about what they are. I know I learned a lot when I went through and did the research for these series of blog posts. The first one is all about project-based learning, and it follows a straightforward thing of imagine, explore, learn, think, and know. And there's a lot of great examples in this blog post on how, in different grade levels, project-based learning has come together with things that are happening at other schools. In case you missed it, WeLearn Wednesday is back for March, and we have, coming up this week, a few different sessions. One is on digging deeper into OneNote and how to use it more than just a place to record student work. So these are going to be a lot of best practices and how to use it effectively across any grade level, which is important. We'll also have a unified classroom workshop on using the assessment tool to bridge your classroom to the MCAS. As you know, we are in Massachusetts. Massachusetts has the MCAS for grades 3 through 10, all the way up through. This tool can help you use it effectively in the classroom to help prepare your students effectively for the MCAS, which is starting just around the corner. And with that in mind, we actually have another workshop, which is called MCAS Preparing and Proctoring for the MCAS and Final Questions and Answers about the Computer-Based Testing. This year, grades 3 through 10, all the way through, will be taking the test on the computer, which for some of you, you may have never have done that before. You might be new educators into the district, having not done MCAS previously. This would be a good time for you to come and visit. If you are a high school teacher who's never proctored an MCAS assessment before, that is computer-based, this would also be very good for you to come to. There'll be lots of great tools. You can sign up on my learning plan. Coming up next is our interview of the week. One of the great things about doing these interviews of the week, we've been doing them for a few years now, and it's actually really exciting to go back and listen to some of the older interviews. And so we're actually going to hit the Wayback machine this week and check out an interview with Katie Welz of Central. Super inspiring. Learn how she's using technology in the classroom. I think you will be excited.
My name is Katie Welz. I'm at Central High School. I teach U.S. history and ancient history, and every other year I teach AP Comparative Government and Politics. This is my 12th year teaching, and I've been at Central for my whole career.
So with 12 years of teaching, you've seen a lot of technology come and go.
Oh,
so
yes.
what are some of those early things that you got to use, experience, see?
Well, I remember at Central when the big thing was that we had 5 desktop computers in each classroom, and that was interesting. What can you do with 5 desktop computers in a class of 25 kids? Over the last few years, we've used our magnet grant to acquire projectors and document cameras and with every teacher having access to a laptop now, it's a lot easier to integrate technology tools in class and not just as in developing things.
So with those 5 laptops, because it's interesting because I'm going to guess a lot of your class sizes were not 5 students.
Yes, most not.
So what were some of did you even use them, or were there some activities that you could do, or was it basically just a word processor?
It was really just a word processor. So if a student needed to type, by the time I got here, also, most of the desktops were outdated. They came in 2001, and that was the year that I graduated. I came back after college, and they were already kind of a mess. So we would use them for typing or maybe to look something up on the internet, but mostly we were analog.
In the last few years, Springfield adopted Brightspace. Before that, teachers were allowed to use whatever learning management system they wanted. So did you use any learning management system before Brightspace?
Yes, I used, kind of. I used Edmodo, which is, for anybody that doesn't know, it's like a cross between a learning management system and a social network. And so it's modeled to look very much like Facebook. The students sign up and they have an account. I create a class, and then all the students join the class. I'm able to post assignments or messages or any information that I want, quizzes, polls, and other stuff I don't remember, onto what becomes their wall, essentially. So it's not as organized as Brightspace, but it was really good as far as getting the information to them and giving them access to it.
With Edmodo and that early adoption of using a learning management system, how did the students react to it?
Initially, they were hesitant, and some of them complained all the time. But some of them really got into it, and they really liked being able to access stuff, from outside class. And they could, if they lost a paper, they could go on to Edmodo and find a copy of the paper, so they didn't have to worry about, waiting until they could get back into class and getting another copy of it. They could just do it there. Also, a lot of kids would use it for homework, and so they would do their homework on Edmodo. They would do it either right in Edmodo, or they would do it in Word and then submit it in an assignment on Edmodo. And so they didn't have to worry about remembering to bring it to school or remembering to put it in their backpack. They could just turn it in as soon as they were done with it, which was pretty great for some kids.
Yeah, I can imagine, especially with high schoolers who have a million other things going on, especially if they're into athletics, or with a class like yours where it was primarily English, social studies, a lot of typing, a lot of research work. Something like that could be really beneficial.
Oh, yeah. If we were working on a project or something, I could post links. Sometimes I would post just a folder of resources that they might want to use. And so even though it wasn't something that I necessarily wanted to assign to them, I could give it to them as something optional. I just kind of gave them a little more guidance, and it gave kids that were very interested an opportunity to go a little bit deeper than we might be going in class.
That's from the student perspective. As a teacher, how did using the Edmodo help you?
I liked using Edmodo because it helped me stay organized. When I was a floater and I didn't have my own classroom, I did a really good job of not having too much stuff and not having more than I could manage. But now that I have a classroom, I collect things, I print things, I copy things, I lose things. Stuff gets disorganized. I'm on the computer, I'm really organized. But if you ever walk into my classroom, it's kind of a mess.
I think that's true for most of us. So that was Edmodo about 4 years ago or so. Now there were early adopters. Were you an early adopter for Brightspace?
Kind of. I had an account before everybody else did, but I didn't use it right away. The first year that we had it, it was kind of after it was adopted by the district, after the whole, trying out different learning management systems. After the district decided on Brightspace, it was kind of presented to the teachers as something that we were going to have to use for testing. And I didn't really know how to use it yet. So I tried to figure some stuff out, and there were things that I didn't find very user-friendly, and so I didn't use it right away. But when at the beginning of last year, I started using it regularly. And I built my whole class. I have my class organized into unit modules. I have all of my resources already uploaded. I have all my assignments already created. And now I can move my course content over from year to year and only tweak it when I want to. So it's really cool. It helps me stay very organized.
So you mentioned early on that the first thing that was told with Brightspace was testing. I remember those days, being 5th grade, and you had the same thing.
Yes.
What was the overall reaction to that?
Oh, not good. Not good at all. People complained. Honestly, I complained. I ran my mouth a good amount about that. But, it's when it's a top-down thing. It's hard to adopt something because you're being told you have to adopt it. But when you see the benefits of how it can help you do better things and how it can help you stay more organized or help your students more, then it's a lot easier to then say, okay, I'm going to learn how to use this. I'm going to put the time in because I know that this is something that's going to be helpful. It's not just something that's being given to me for this year and it's going to go away next year and it's going to learn it for no good reason.
Someone from the district was listening right now. What would your advice have been now in hindsight of seeing the start being like, tests, no. And then as you learn more, you're like, oh, wow, there's actually a lot of great benefits. What would you have suggested to start?
Honestly, I probably would have tried to assess what the teachers might want to use it for, whether that be through a survey or, focus group or an interview or anything. Just see what the teachers are looking for and then say, okay, this is this great new tool we have and we can use it for this, and just show some of the awesome features that it has. And once we know what it has, then we can kind of say, oh, I could see all the different ways that I can use that.
I know when I interviewed for the job that I have now, which allows me to do this, that was one of the things that was asked. And I'm like, I would not have started with assessments. Everything I know now about Brightspace, I would have started with Dropbox and assignments, because to me, like that, realizing that I didn't have to keep papers anymore, that everything could be kept there and that you could set it up to like students could hand in paper after paper after paper.
Yeah.
And then you could grade it and you could put a rubric to it. I'm like, to me, if we had to pick an entry point, that would have been the entry point I would have gone with.
I totally agree. I think it's helpful for teachers in not having to carry things and keep things organized, and even just taking stuff home and grading on paper. Like, I don't want to bring a pile of papers home. Now I bring my laptop home, I log in, and I can grade everything right on my laptop. It's awesome. I can attach rubrics. I can send messages to students. If I want them to make changes, they don't have to completely rewrite something. They can just tweak it and re-upload it. It's awesome. Yeah.
Better than when we were in school.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I remember those days. The
First
7th
draft,
grade.
Second draft.
Social
Third draft.
studies, writing my history papers, and there's like 4 mistakes you need to go fix.
Yeah.
Oh, there's 2 mistakes now. You need to rewrite the whole thing.
But you can't have any crossouts
erase marks.
No erase marks, no crossouts. I remember using a lot of whiteout.
So
I don't even keep whiteout anymore. It's awesome.
So Brightspace seems to really have advanced a lot of the things that you're able to do in the classroom now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So other than the kind of things that we've been talking about, are there other aspects of it that you're like, this is awesome and I should highlight this because this is something I'm using as well? All
right, let's see. I use the announcements tool. I love the announcements tool because I can, I don't know if this is the same at all the schools, but we often have students that are frequently absent. And so when I have students that show that they're kind of chronic absentees, I can encourage them to just log in outside of school. If you're not coming to school for whatever reason, at least log in and do the work, because if you can access the content, that's what I care about. I want these kids to learn. And if they're able to learn it without my direct presence, that's okay with me. So I think it's a really good resource for any kid that's not able to come to school every day. And the announcements tool is cool for that because I just put directions for whatever we do in class each day up in the announcements, and then I might put a link to an assignment or a link to a resource. And then I can also put links into the tools that I'm using outside of Brightspace, and it makes it easier to kind of facilitate getting kids into whatever activity we're doing for the day, rather than having to explain a million times or have them type out a really long URL. They can just click the link and go right to it. It's great.
Yeah, the long URL. That was the bane of my existence my third year of teaching, because students would always make a mistake in typing that up written on the board. And so then that's when I learned about Bitly. And,
yes.
And like even that, like is like 7 characters.
Yeah.
And they'd still mess it up. And you're just like, I just wish they would just click. And
just
then with Brightspace, I just put the link in there and it's boom.
It's fantastic.
It's great.
I love it.
So you mentioned tools outside of Brightspace, and of course, digital learning. We like to hear all about the tools. So what are some other tools that you're using?
So one of the other things that I've been using recently is Nearpod. One of my colleagues. Can I name one of my
Sure.
colleagues? One of my colleagues, Sean Kavanaugh. He's my next door neighbor in my classroom. He introduced me to Nearpod, and it's awesome. I can take all of my my PowerPoint presentations that I always tried to make interactive, by asking questions as we were progressing through them. I would, ask questions of everybody and try to get kids to think about why things are the way they are or how things are happening the way they are. But in class, it would always end up being, one kid or 2 kids that really wanted to answer all the time. And then there's those few kids that don't want to talk in class at all, even if they know the answers. They're just shy or they're not confident. And so Nearpod allows me to embed questions into my presentations. So even if we're still going through the presentation as a group in class, I can put open response questions. I can put checks for understanding, like multiple choice style. I can collaboration boards, which is kind of like Padlet. If you're familiar with Padlet, it's just it's a board and kids can type in and put sticky notes up on the board. So all the benefits of sticky notes without actually having to deal with any sticky notes. It's wonderful.
So again, more or less paper.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So Nearpod, is that something that you have to pay for? Because I don't know if our listeners really know much about it.
So Nearpod has a free version. The free version, I want to say you get up to 50 megabytes of storage. You can have a class size of up to 30. And, there's certain limitations on it. But I started using it. I used the free version until this year. And then I ran out of space. Honestly, it's $120 for the year. And I'll pitch it. It was awesome. It was definitely worth it. So, and I think I got a deal for the beginning of the year that I paid a little bit less because they were trying to get new subscribers.
Nice. You use Nearpod. You use Brightspace. What are some of the other tools that you use?
I do a lot with, not a lot, but I use Kahoot for reviews. I think it's a lot of fun. I used to have this cool review game that I played. It index cards and numbers written on the board and like random points amounts, and that was fun. But again, just like the class discussion, sometimes you'd get the same kids participating and then some kids would just sit back and kind of listen. With Kahoot, everybody's able to participate, and it's kind of a free-for-all, which is awesome.
Yeah, I remember using with 5th graders using Kahoot, and it turned into everyone would start out in their seats with their laptops and they'd flip it open so it was just the touch screen. Yes. And then about the 3rd question in, the people who are sitting in the back of the room are like, if I sit closer, I'm going to get the answer faster.
That's awesome.
So at one point, I think I had all 20 students sitting like either on the floor or standing or sitting on a counter. That's as close to the board as possible without being blocking everybody's
on
view.
The board.
But they really took to it. They enjoyed it a lot. Kahoots are a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and it's fun to see, it reminds me a lot of, for those listeners out there who know this, You Don't Know Jack.
Yes!
Minus the fun,
Jack.
minus the fun comments that you get afterwards.
Oh, I just make the fun comments in class. It's great.
Right. I love You Don't Know Jack.
That's awesome.
I think there's an app for it now,
I think there is, too. It's cool.
So you use Kahoot. Have you ventured into any of the Office 365 tools?
Yes. We use Office 365 all the time. I actually found it before the district started rolling it out last year, and I started playing with it. But my students would get very frustrated because since the district hadn't rolled it out yet, it wasn't all finalized. And so we didn't actually know the procedures yet, but it was cool. It's neat to be able to tell the students that they can, if they have a computer at home, but they don't have a word processor, if they're using OpenOffice or Google Docs, they can download the whole Office suite for free because we have the institutional account. And, I try to get kids to download the Outlook mail on their phone so that they can stay in contact with me and their teachers, just from their phones, even if they don't have a computer at home. I've had kids that don't have a computer, but they have a tablet or they have a phone, like a smartphone, and they're able to download the software and then use that as a tool for their education instead of just a distraction from their education, which is awesome. I don't know if you can tell from the microphone, but I have a giant grin on my face.
Yeah. Well, if you can't, I'm going to say, yeah, she's got a giant grin on her face. So with having students having access to Word and OneDrive and all of that on either their tablet or their phone, have you noticed an uptick in students working outside of school?
Yes, definitely. At least the students most of them, yes. There's still the kids that kind of drag their feet. I also always accept work on paper. I feel like that's still important, and there's some kids that just the technology is a hindrance to them. Either they're just not well enough prepared for it, or they don't have the skills yet. And I don't want it to be a hindrance for them. I want it to be helpful. So I still take work on paper, and everything I assign that they can use Microsoft Office for, or that they can do on Brightspace, they can also do on paper. But I do find a lot more kids that type their work. I find a lot more kids will send me drafts of things before they submit it. I find a lot more kids will ask me to go into something and make comments on it in their Microsoft Office. It's awesome. It's really cool. Just this week, in fact, we in my ancient history class, we crowdsourced a document. We broke down Hammurabi's code into the actions and the results for each regulation, and then they had to make inferences about Babylonian culture based only on what they could get out of this document. And so, I assigned each kid to a particular part of the document, and they had to read it and they had to break it down. I uploaded a chart in a document. It had 3 parts. It had a vocabulary section, and then it had 3 columns where they could put the actions, the results, and then the inferences. Each kid was responsible for a certain portion of the document. Each portion was covered by 4 or 5 kids, and so they were able to work together on this whole document. Now, at the end of it all, I went through, I made comments on it. I asked more questions about things. Now they're writing an essay, and they have this resource already, instead of just having what they themselves were able to do, or only the original document. They've got the whole class's work that they're able to use as a resource for this essay. So they complained a lot about, they said that the editing the Office document was laggy, but working on it in class, most of the kids were into it. And I think they all saw the benefit of the collaboration part of it, which was really neat.
That is awesome. It sounds like an awesome project. And the whole laggy thing, I'm sure you explained to them, like, it's going from your computer to the internet to everybody's computer.
Yes, right.
It's not an instantaneous
it's not
thing.
instant. So be patient. And I think one of the biggest things with teaching kids technology tools and using technology tools is encouraging patience, which, hey, it's another learning opportunity.
Right. I think that's even true with adults, too.
Oh, yes,
like,
most definitely.
Patience. It's not immediate.
It's a virtue. It's good.
So one of the questions that seems to come up often late is there are some people out there that are like, oh, Office 365 replaces Brightspace.
No.
I can see you shaking your head. I was going to ask what your opinion was on that, because I know anytime I hear that, I'm like, no, they're different tools. They do different things.
Yeah, they're entirely different things. Office 365, it's basically the the same different tools that were part of Office on the desktop, but now there's a collaboration piece to them. Microsoft Teams, I could see someone trying to use it in place of Brightspace if they didn't have access to a learning management system, but just having used it in the past week, I don't think it's as functional as Brightspace is. Like, Brightspace is meant to be a management system where you have all these embedded features like Dropboxes and submission tools and assessments and announcements. Microsoft Teams might be good for collaboration, but it's not as user-friendly. It's not as customizable either.
I agree with all those points. Especially like with Teams, like you have to use forms to give a test. You have to use Class Notebook to do collaboration work. It gives you like a Facebook-like screen where you could talk back and forth, and that's great, but it doesn't give you half of the function.
It's definitely not as functional.
So that's right now. Are there things that you've learned since the beginning of the year that you haven't tried yet that you're interested in trying?
I think I'm really just interested in exploring more of what I'm already doing. Like the Nearpod's always adding new functionality. They just set it up so that you can have a collaboration board. You used to only be able to do it in a live lesson with students, but with the paid version of Nearpod, you also can give student-paced assignments, and so students log into it and they can progress at their own pace. They answer the questions that are there. Up until recently, you couldn't have a collaboration board in a self-paced lesson, which was kind of a bummer because I really like the collaboration piece. That's one of the reasons that I've continued to do notes on an overhead instead of just giving kids an outline and having them read them and answer questions. It's because I really think they benefit from hearing what each other have to say. So with the collaboration board, they're still able to go at their own pace, but they can still benefit from what everybody's contributing, which is cool.
So for our final question, just because I don't want to take too much more of your time on this lovely Friday, we like to ask, if you had the opportunity, especially that you've been in the district as long as you have now, to stand in front of all the new hires in the district and offer them advice, whether it is with technology or without, what would you say to them?
Talk to your neighbors. Talk to your neighbors, collaborate, and be human to your students, because if your students see you as a person, then they're going to be more willing to do what you want them to do, whether that be, an assignment or trying a technology tool. If they see that you are like they are and treat them like you'd like to be treated, then, that I think that goes really far. It's just like a matter of respect. And if they feel that you respect them and that you consider them to be someone worthy of your respect, then to try the things that you want to try.
That's awesome. Thank you for your time today.
So I hope you were inspired by that interview just as I was. Now, I know some of the things that she talked about in the district we're moving away from in regards to Brightspace, but Unified Classroom does all those things, and I think even better because it goes directly to the gradebook. Again, if you want to learn more about using Unified Classroom in the district, email us at DLA Support. We will point you in the right direction. We will point you to when we're doing trainings so that you can be better prepared for the future. As with all podcasts, I just want to remind you that if you go out to your favorite sites and you leave us reviews, we get to see them and they help us move up the charts so that we are able to have a wider range. There are people in this district who, even though we've announced it all over the place, don't know that we actually have a podcast, never heard of a podcast, and we want to make sure that we can reach everybody. Because one of the most important things about this job is to amplify what teachers are doing in the classroom, because there is amazing things happening in this classroom, and I want to be able to share that with everybody. Sometimes we feel like we are siloed into our own buildings, into our own rooms, and we don't get a chance to go out and see what others are doing or even hear about it, because during PD days, like we'll have at the end of this week, We are always so busy with so many different things to do. This podcast is an opportunity to not only just hear about things that are going on in the district, but to hear what teachers are doing with the tools that we have, which I think is incredibly powerful and incredibly important. If you're interested in being a part of the podcast, it's super easy. I just come and I talk to you, and we have a microphone between us. If you're interested, email us at dlasupport@springfieldpublicschools.com. We'd love to talk with you. If you know of somebody, I actually got 3 recommendations last week that I'm sending emails out to later today to have them come in to the podcast to just talk about the things that they are doing. We would love to hear that, whether it's you or someone you know who would be great to talk to. If you're always looking for inspiration, you can always follow me out on the social media sites. If you follow @BeardedTechEd, you will find anything that I've posted or retweeted or posted out there. There's just a plethora of great tools that sometimes these podcasts, even though I could talk for hours, it's so hard to share everything. And so we just want to give you the opportunity to get information into your buildings and into your classroom. I hope you were inspired this week. Check us out next week for more interviews and more updates. I'm your host, Mike Thomas, and this is the SBS Digital Learning Hour.